The woman sitting across from me at the restaurant wasn't supposed to know my husband. At least that's what I thought. She was young, elegant, and wearing the kind of expensive watch I'd once begged my husband to buy for himself because I thought he deserved something nice. Then she reached across the table and touched his hand. My husband smiled at her. Not the polite smile he gave coworkers, not the tired smile he'd given me lately. It was the smile I hadn't seen in years. The smile he used to give me when we were newly married. I stood frozen near the restaurant entrance, staring at the two people who had just destroyed 14 years of my life. Then my husband leaned forward and kissed her. And that's when something inside me went completely still. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't walk over and slap either of them. Instead, I quietly took out my phone and took 3 pictures. One of him kissing her, one of their hands intertwined, and one of the diamond bracelet I'd given him money to buy for my birthday, sitting on her wrist. Then I walked out, because I had just discovered something much worse than an affair. My husband wasn't simply cheating on me. He was preparing to leave me, and he had no idea that I had already discovered what he was planning to take with him. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 39 years old when my marriage ended. My husband, David, was 42. We lived in a comfortable neighborhood outside Charlotte, North Carolina, in a 2-story brick house with a white front porch and a backyard my husband had spent years turning into his little sanctuary. We had been married for 14 years. We had a 13-year-old daughter named Lily, and for most of our marriage, I honestly believed David and I were happy. Not perfect. Happy. We had survived layoffs, medical bills, moving to a new city, the birth of our daughter, arguments about money, and the death of my mother. We had held each other through things that were supposed to make couples stronger. Or at least, that's what I thought. David owned a commercial landscaping company. I worked part-time as an accounting consultant, mostly from home. It wasn't a glamorous life, but it was ours. We had family dinners, Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, Sunday afternoons watching football. Every December, we drove to the mountains for a weekend and stayed in the same little cabin. Our marriage wasn't a movie, but it felt real. Until about a year before I discovered the affair. That's when David changed. At first it was subtle. He started coming home later. Then he started taking his phone everywhere. The bathroom, the garage, even the shower. If I walked into the room while he was texting, his thumb would immediately lock the screen. One night I asked him about it. Everything okay at work? He looked up from his phone. Yeah, why? You've been working late a lot. He sighed. Claire, I'm trying to grow the business. I know. So? So nothing. I smiled. I just miss you. He kissed my forehead. I'm right here. But he wasn't. Not anymore. Then there was his secretary. Her name was Madison. She had worked for David for about 8 months. She was 28, smart, confident, and apparently very good at her job. At first I liked her. She had called our house once to confirm a dinner, reservation for a business meeting. Mrs. Bennett, I'm sorry to bother you, she'd said. Please call me Claire. Oh, thank you. She sounded nervous. David has been talking about how much you help with the business. I laughed. He's exaggerating. No, he's not. There was something strange about the way she said it. But I didn't think much of it. I met her once at a company barbecue. She smiled at me. I smiled back. She called me Mrs. Bennett. I remember thinking she seemed respectful. I remember thinking she was harmless. I remember being wrong. The first thing that really bothered me happened on our anniversary. Our 14th wedding anniversary. I had planned everything. A nice restaurant. A hotel downtown. A small gift. Nothing extravagant. Just a night for us. But David came home at 6:30. I forgot. I stared at him. Forgot what? Our anniversary. He rubbed his forehead. Claire, I'm sorry. I waited. He didn't have anything else to say. You forgot? I've been slammed at work. I looked at the flowers I'd bought for myself. Then I looked at him. Okay. He noticed the sadness on my face. I'm sorry. I forced a smile. It's fine. It wasn't. That night, I slept beside him while he faced the other direction. At 2:14 a.m., his phone buzzed. He grabbed it immediately. I pretended to be asleep. A few seconds later, I heard him quietly laugh. Then he got out of bed and walked downstairs. I followed him silently. I stopped at the top of the stairs. He was standing in the kitchen, texting someone. Then he whispered, "I miss you too." My heart dropped. But before I could move, he heard the floor creak. He looked up. I stepped backward. He came upstairs. "Everything okay?" I nodded. "Yeah." "Couldn't sleep?" "No." He kissed my cheek. "Go back to bed." I watched him walk away. That was the first night I knew. I just didn't know how much I didn't know. Over the next few weeks, I became more observant. Not a spy, not a detective. Just a wife who had stopped ignoring what her instincts were screaming. David began dressing differently for work. New shirts, new cologne. He suddenly cared about his hair. He joined a gym. When I asked him about it, he laughed. "Trying to stay healthy. You've never cared about the gym. People change." Yes, they do. Sometimes they change because they're trying to become better, and sometimes they change because they're trying to impress someone new. One Saturday morning, David left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. I wasn't looking for anything, but an email notification appeared. The subject line said, "Apartment documents, confidential." I clicked it. There were no romantic messages, no pictures, no obvious evidence, just an email from a real estate agent. The message said, "Once the divorce paperwork is filed, we can move forward with the lease." I stared at the screen. Divorce paperwork. My hands went cold. I opened another email, then another. There were apartment listings, furniture estimates, a moving company, a bank transfer, and one message from Madison. He promised me everything would be finalized before Christmas. I couldn't breathe. Christmas was 6 weeks away. My husband wasn't considering leaving me. He had already planned it, and Madison knew. I sat at the kitchen table for almost an hour. Then I did something that surprised even me. I didn't confront him. Instead, I called my older sister, Megan. She answered immediately. "Hey, Claire." I tried to speak. Nothing came out. "Claire?" I finally whispered, "I think David is cheating on me." There was silence. Then Megan asked, "Are you sure?" "No," I swallowed. "But I think he's planning to divorce me." Megan didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. She didn't say, "Leave him." She didn't say, "Forgive him." She said, "Don't make a decision tonight." Why? Because you're hurt. And when you're hurt, you think about surviving today. You need to think about protecting tomorrow. Those words changed everything. The next morning, I started documenting everything. Not because I wanted revenge, because I needed to understand what was happening. I reviewed our finances, our business accounts, our mortgage, our savings, our retirement accounts, and that's when I discovered the second betrayal. David had been moving money, small amounts at first, then larger ones. Over the previous 9 months, nearly $86,000 had disappeared from accounts I thought we both controlled. I found transfers to an account I'd never seen. I found business expenses that didn't make sense. Luxury hotel rooms, jewelry, restaurant bills, weekend trips, and one charge from a resort in Charleston. The date was my birthday. He had told me he was too busy to celebrate. He had taken Madison there. I stared at that charge until the numbers blurred. I cried then, not because of the money, because I remembered sitting alone in our kitchen that night, eating leftover birthday cake with Lily. David had texted me, "Sorry, babe. Crazy day." He had been 2 hours away with her. I hired an attorney. Her name was Susan. She listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, she asked, "Do you want to save your marriage?" I looked down. "I don't know." "That's okay." She closed the folder. "Then don't decide today. What should I do?" "Protect yourself, emotionally and financially. Then decide what you want." For the first time in months, I felt like someone was standing beside me. Susan helped me understand our financial situation. She also told me something that made my stomach turn. David had apparently been telling Madison that I was unstable, that our marriage had been dead for years, that I refused to support his dreams, that he was trapped. I almost laughed. I had supported that man's dreams when he had $3,000 in a checking account. I had worked nights while he built his company. I had skipped vacations so he could buy equipment. I had taken care of our daughter while he traveled. And now he was telling another woman that I was the reason his life was miserable. That's when my sadness turned into clarity. 2 weeks later came the restaurant. The restaurant where I saw them together. I had followed David after he told me he was going to a business dinner. I didn't intend to confront him. I only wanted proof. And I got it. When I walked out, I called Susan. "I have everything." She asked, "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Then don't confront him yet." "Why?" "Because you need to know what he's planning." So I waited. For 3 weeks. 3 of the hardest weeks of my life. David continued lying. He kissed me goodnight. He asked me what I wanted for Christmas. He hugged Lily. He acted like our family was normal. Meanwhile, I quietly prepared to leave. I opened my own bank account. I secured copies of important documents. I made arrangements for Lily. I changed the passwords to accounts that were legally mine, and I began moving my belongings into a small storage unit. David never noticed. He was too busy planning his new life. Then one night, he finally confronted me. We were sitting at the dinner table. Lily was upstairs. David put down his fork. "Claire." "Yeah?" "I think we need to talk." My heart started beating faster. "About what?" "Our marriage." I looked at him. He sighed. "I don't think we're happy anymore." There it was. The speech he'd rehearsed. "I think we've grown apart." I stayed quiet. "I don't want to hurt you." I almost smiled. "You're going to tell me you've met someone." His face changed. "What?" "Madison." He froze. The room became completely silent. Then he whispered, How long?" He looked away. "Claire, how long?" 6 months. I laughed. "You've been lying for almost a year." "I'm sorry." "No?" He looked at me. "I'm sorry." "Don't say that." "Claire, I never wanted this to happen." "You planned an apartment." He went pale. "You went through my things?" "No." I slid a folder across the table. "You left your laptop open." He opened the folder. Bank statements, hotel receipts, emails, apartment documents, photographs, everything. His face became completely blank. "Where did you get these?" "From our life." He stared at me. Then he said the sentence I will never forget. "I was going to tell you." I looked at him. "When?" He said nothing. "After you moved her into our life?" "That's not fair." I stood up. "Fair?" He looked angry now. "You've been unhappy too." I stared at him. "You don't get to rewrite 14 years because you cheated." "I made a mistake." "No?" I shook my head. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is buying the wrong birthday gift. You made a series of decisions." He lowered his voice. "I love her." That sentence hurt. But strangely, it also freed me. Because suddenly I knew there was nothing left to save. I nodded. "Then go." He looked confused. "What?" "Go." "Claire, you wanted a new life." I walked toward the stairs. "Now you can have one." David expected me to collapse. He expected tears. He expected begging. Instead, I packed a suitcase. He watched me. "Where are you going?" "To Megan's." "You can't just leave." I turned around. "Watch me." For the first time in 14 years, he looked afraid. The next morning, I filed for divorce. David was furious. Not because he wanted me back. Because he hadn't expected me to act first. His attorney contacted mine. Then came the accusations. David claimed I was trying to destroy his business. I wasn't. He claimed I was hiding money. I wasn't. He claimed I had abandoned the marriage. I hadn't. And then Susan presented the financial records. The missing $86,000? The apartment. The jewelry. The hotel rooms. The transfers. The evidence was undeniable. The divorce became complicated. But I stayed calm. I wasn't trying to punish David. I simply refused to protect him from the consequences of his choices. Then something unexpected happened. Madison contacted me. She asked to meet. I almost refused, but I agreed. We met at a coffee shop. She looked nervous. I know you hate me. I don't hate you. She looked surprised. Why? Because I don't know you. She looked down. Then she said, David lied to me. I didn't answer. He told me your marriage had been over for years. I nodded. He said you didn't love him. I didn't respond. He told me you were going to divorce him. I looked at her. And did you believe him? She started crying. Yes. She took out her phone. He told me he had already filed. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then she showed me the messages. David had promised her a future. He had promised her a house. He had promised her that after the divorce, they would get married. But there was one thing I noticed. He had told her the same things he'd once told me. The same phrases. The same promises. The same dreams. It was like looking at the man I married through someone else's eyes. I finally understood. Madison hadn't stolen my husband. My husband had chosen to betray me. And that distinction mattered. I stood up. I hope you find what you're looking for. She wiped her tears. What about you? I smiled sadly. I'm going to find myself. The divorce took almost 8 months. During that time, Lily struggled. She blamed herself. She asked if we'd gotten divorced because she was difficult. One night, I sat beside her bed. Sweetheart, none of this happened because of you. Then why did Dad leave? I took a breath. Sometimes adults make choices that hurt other people. Does Dad still love me? Yes. Do you still love Dad? That question broke my heart. I looked at my daughter. I loved your father very much. Past tense? I smiled sadly. Some love changes shape. She didn't understand then. Maybe she will someday. The biggest surprise came near the end of the divorce. David's business was struggling. He had spent heavily trying to impress Madison. He had taken money from the company. He had signed leases he couldn't afford. He had assumed that after the divorce I would walk away from everything. But the company had been built on years of work we had both contributed to. A settlement was reached. David kept the company. I received my legal share. He kept the house. I received my share of the equity. And the money he'd secretly transferred? It was accounted for. He couldn't hide it anymore. In the end, he lost far more than he expected. Not because I destroyed him. Because the truth finally had a price. 3 months after the divorce, I moved into a small house with a blue front door. It wasn't as big as our old home. There wasn't a huge backyard. There wasn't a fancy kitchen. But every room felt peaceful. I painted the living room myself. Lily helped me choose the curtains. We bought a secondhand dining table. And on the first night, we sat on the floor eating pizza because we hadn't unpacked the plates yet. Lily looked around. Mom? Yeah? I like this house. I smiled. Me too. Then she hugged me. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like I was starting over. I felt like I was starting fresh. 6 months later, I started my own consulting business. It began with 1 client, then 3, then 10. I hired an assistant. I rented a tiny office. I started speaking at local business events. I became financially independent in a way I'd never been during my marriage. And somewhere along the way, I stopped checking whether David was happy. I stopped wondering if Madison had stayed with him. I stopped looking at his social media. I stopped caring. That was the real turning point. Because revenge had once meant imagining him regretting what he'd done. But eventually, I realized I didn't need his regret. I needed my peace. One afternoon, nearly 2 years after the divorce, Lily called me from school. Mom? What's wrong? Nothing. She sounded excited. Dad is here. My heart skipped. Why? He wants to talk to you. I don't think... He says it's important. I heard David's voice in the background. Please, Claire. I closed my eyes. Fine. He came to my house that evening. When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. He looked exhausted. Older. His business had failed. The house had been sold. And Madison was gone. He stood on my porch. I don't know if I deserve to talk to you. You probably don't. He nodded. I know. I waited. He looked at me. I was stupid. I said nothing. I destroyed everything. You did. He swallowed. I thought you would always be there. That was your mistake. I thought you'd forgive me. I looked at him. I did forgive you. His eyes widened. You did? Yes. Then why won't you give me another chance? I took a breath. Because forgiveness isn't an invitation. He looked down. I miss you. I know. I miss our family. So do I. I want to come home. I shook my head. There's nothing to come home to. His eyes filled with tears. I'd do anything. No. Claire, you had everything. He looked at me. You had a woman who loved you. You had a daughter who adored you. You had a home. You had a business. You had a family. I paused. And you traded it for something you thought would make you happier. He cried quietly. I was wrong. I know. He looked at me. Is there someone else? I smiled. No. Then maybe... No. He stopped. I continued. The reason I'm saying no isn't because I hate you. Then why? Because I finally love myself enough not to return to the place that broke me. He stared at me. And for the first time I saw him understand. He hadn't lost me when he kissed Madison. He lost me when he believed I'd always be there no matter what he did. David left. I watched him walk down the driveway. Then I closed the door. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I simply breathed. Later that evening, Lily came home. She walked into the kitchen. Did Dad come? Yes. What did he want? I looked at my daughter. He wanted something I couldn't give him. She nodded slowly. Are you okay? I smiled. I'm better than okay. She hugged me. And I realized something. For months after discovering the affair, I had wondered what I had done wrong. I questioned my appearance, my personality, my marriage, my choices. I wondered why I hadn't been enough. But I finally understood. Someone else's betrayal is not proof of your inadequacy. Sometimes people hurt the people who love them most because they are chasing something they think will make them feel complete. And no amount of love can fix someone who refuses to be honest. A year later, I was invited to speak at a women's leadership conference. The topic was rebuilding after major life changes. I stood on stage in front of hundreds of women. Some were married. Some were divorced. Some were grieving. Some were simply trying to figure out what came next. I looked out at the audience, and I told them the truth. I used to think the worst thing my husband could do was cheat on me. The room became silent, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was believing that his betrayal meant my life was over. I paused. It wasn't. I smiled. My marriage ended. My family changed. My plans changed. But I didn't end. I rebuilt. I learned. I grew. And eventually, I became someone I didn't recognize. Someone in the audience asked, "Do you regret loving him?" I thought about that for a long moment. No. Why? Because the love was real on my side. I smiled. What he did doesn't make the love I gave meaningless. It only means he wasn't worthy of receiving it forever. The room erupted in applause. But I wasn't thinking about applause. I was thinking about the woman I had been 2 years earlier. The woman sitting alone at a restaurant entrance, watching her husband kiss another woman, thinking her life had just ended. She didn't know what was coming. She didn't know she'd become stronger. She didn't know she'd build her own company. She didn't know her daughter would become her greatest source of strength. She didn't know she'd eventually forgive the man who broke her. And most importantly, she didn't know she would one day be grateful that she had finally seen the truth. Because sometimes the truth arrives like a wrecking ball. It destroys the life you thought you wanted. But when the dust settles, you discover something extraordinary. You weren't destroyed. You were released. And that was the greatest thing my husband ever gave me. Not the marriage. Not the house. Not the life we'd built. The freedom to finally build a life that belonged entirely to me. He thought I would forgive him and take him back. Instead, I forgave him and walked away. And that was the one thing he never saw coming.